For 500 years, if you'd flown over this part of the Amazon, you'd have seen exactly one thing: unbroken green canopy, stretching to the horizon, nothing to suggest anything had ever stood beneath it. In 2024, researchers pointed a laser at that same jungle from the air, and in a matter of weeks, an entire lost civilization came into focus. Underneath it, plazas, roads, thousands of structures, a network of settlements sprawling across an area bigger than the island of Manhattan, sitting exactly where everyone assumed there had only ever been trees. This isn't a legend, and it isn't speculation. It's a peer-reviewed discovery, published in one of the most respected scientific journals on Earth, and it's forcing a real rewrite of what anyone thought was possible in the Amazon rainforest. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a laser can see through a jungle canopy, what it actually found buried underneath one of the densest forests on the planet, and why this discovery is quietly overturning a 200-year-old assumption about who could have lived here at all. Subscribe before we go in, because this find is barely a year old, and almost nobody's talking about it yet. Start with the assumption this discovery just broke. For most of the history of modern archaeology, the Amazon rainforest was treated as essentially untouched by large-scale human civilization, too dense, too resource-poor, too hostile an environment to support anything beyond small, scattered, mobile groups of people. That assumption ran deep. Early European explorers who claimed to see large, organized settlements along Amazon rivers in the 16th century were largely dismissed by later historians as exaggerating or simply mistaken, because the physical evidence to support those claims never seemed to be there. And on the ground, that skepticism made a certain kind of sense. Walk through the Amazon rainforest today, and you're met with trees, vines, and undergrowth so dense that visibility can drop to just a few meters in any direction. If a stone platform or an ancient road were sitting 20 feet away, buried under centuries of soil and root growth, you could walk directly past it and never know. That's exactly the problem a technology called LIDAR was built to solve. LIDAR stands for light detection and ranging, and the basic principle is straightforward, even if the engineering behind it is genuinely sophisticated. An aircraft flies a mapped grid pattern over a target area, firing rapid pulses of laser light down toward the ground, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pulses per second. Most of those pulses hit the forest canopy and bounce back immediately, but some of them slip through small gaps in the leaves and branches, all the way down to the actual ground surface, and bounce back from there instead. By precisely timing how long each pulse takes to return, the system can calculate the exact distance to whatever it hit: canopy, understory, or bare earth. Collect enough of those ground-reaching pulses over a wide enough area, and software can effectively subtract the vegetation out of the picture entirely, reconstructing a bare earth digital map of the terrain underneath, as if the entire forest had simply been switched off. It's not new technology in general. LIDAR has been used in archaeology since the early 2000s, most famously to reveal hidden structures in Central America and Southeast Asia. What's new here is where it was pointed and what it found once it was. The specific area is the Upano Valley, in the Amazonian foothills of Ecuador, near the base of the Andes. Researchers, led by French archaeologist Stephen Rostaing and an international team, flew LIDAR surveys across this region and then spent years processing the resulting data, cross-referencing it with targeted ground excavation to confirm what the laser scans were actually showing. Their findings were published in January 2024 in the journal Science Genuine, peer-reviewed, heavily scrutinized research, not a press conference. What the LIDAR revealed, once the jungle canopy was digitally stripped away, was staggering in scale. A network of at least 6 major settlement complexes, connected by an extensive system of roads and causeways, some running arrows straight for kilometers across the landscape. Engineering choices that require real planning and sustained labor, not the footprint of small, temporary, mobile communities. Within these settlements, researchers identified thousands of earthen platforms and mounds, arranged around central plazas, following organized, deliberate layouts rather than random scattered habitation. Some of these platform complexes covered areas comparable to entire city blocks. Taken together, the full extent of the settlement network spans an area researchers estimate at roughly 300 square kilometers, genuinely larger than the island of Manhattan, representing what the research team describes as one of the oldest and largest low-density urban complexes ever identified in the Amazon basin. The dating adds another layer to how significant this find actually is. Radiocarbon analysis places the core occupation of these settlements at roughly 2,500 years old, with evidence of continuous or repeated habitation across a span of around 1,000 years. That places these communities firmly in the same broad era as the height of classical Greece, centuries before the Roman Empire existed. And long before the Inca civilization the Andes region is more commonly associated with today. This wasn't a brief experiment in urban living quickly abandoned. It was a sustained, evolving society, occupying this specific stretch of the Amazon for an extended period of real historical depth. And it's worth being specific about why the road network in particular matters so much to researchers. Because it's easy to undersell. These aren't informal footpaths worn down by repeated foot traffic over time. The LIDAR data shows engineered causeways, straight, wide, and clearly planned, connecting different settlement centers across the landscape in a way that implies coordinated construction and, likely, some form of centralized or at least coordinated authority overseeing the effort. Building and maintaining infrastructure like that requires exactly the kind of organized labor, planning, and social structure that the older, small, scattered, unstructured Amazon populations model specifically assumed didn't exist here. Rostain and his colleagues have been explicit about the broader implication. This find adds substantial weight to a growing body of evidence, developed over roughly the last 2 decades across multiple Amazon regions, that pre-Columbian Amazonian societies were, in a number of specific locations, considerably more populous, more organized, and more architecturally sophisticated than the traditional academic narrative allowed for. It's worth being careful and precise about what this discovery does and doesn't claim, because the honest version is already remarkable without needing embellishment. This isn't evidence of some singular, unknown, lost advanced civilization with technology or knowledge beyond what's otherwise documented for the region and period it's real. Well-organized human settlement and infrastructure, built using materials and techniques consistent with other confirmed pre-Columbian Amazonian societies. Just at a scale and level of planning nobody had previously confirmed for this specific location. The people who built these settlements almost certainly didn't literally vanish or get erased from history in any dramatic sense, like most complex societies in this region. Gradual decline, environmental shifts, and eventually the catastrophic population collapse that followed European contact across the Americas are the most likely explanations for why these communities didn't persist to the present day, though the precise details of that decline in this specific valley are still being actively researched. What makes this discovery genuinely significant isn't a mystery about supernatural or impossible technology, it's that an entire sophisticated, densely organized society existed in a place and at a scale that mainstream archaeology confidently said couldn't have existed here. And it stayed completely invisible, sitting directly under working modern jungle, until a laser finally gave researchers a way to see past the leaves. That's also exactly why this discovery matters beyond just this one valley. The Upano Valley findings join a growing list of similar LIDAR-driven discoveries across the wider Amazon basin over roughly the past decade. Other research teams working in Bolivia and Brazil have used the same core technology to reveal their own extensive networks of pre-Columbian earthworks, causeways, and settlement mounds, previously invisible under equally dense canopy. Each new discovery adds pressure to the same conclusion. The popular image of the Amazon as essentially a pristine, untouched wilderness, occupied only lightly and briefly by small nomadic groups, appears to be substantially wrong for at least significant portions of the basin's deeper history. The rainforest wasn't simply concealing a handful of isolated curiosities. It may have been quietly sitting on top of an entire, still largely unmapped layer of human history the whole time. And here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you a little. In the best way, researchers openly acknowledge that LIDAR surveys covering the full extent of the Amazon basin remain nowhere close to complete. The Upano Valley find itself only came from a relatively limited, targeted survey area. The vast majority of Amazon rainforest, millions of square kilometers of it, has never been scanned this way at all. Which means, statistically, if a settlement network this extensive was sitting completely undetected under one specific valley until 2024, there's no strong reason to assume it's the only one. It's simply the one that happened to get looked at first, with the right tool, at the right time. So here's where this actually leaves us. A real, peer-reviewed, published discovery confirms that an organized, densely populated, engineered society lived, built, and thrived in a specific stretch of the Amazon rainforest for roughly 1,000 years, starting around 500 years ago, a society whose roads, plazas, and settlements sprawled across an area larger than Manhattan, and which stayed completely invisible to the outside world for the better part of 2 millennia, hidden not behind any deliberate concealment, but simply behind the ordinary, relentless growth of the jungle itself. It took a laser, fired from an aircraft, pulsing hundreds of thousands of times a second, to finally see straight through what generations of explorers, historians, and archaeologists on the ground never could. And the vast majority of the forest this civilization once called home still hasn't been scanned at all. If a discovery this size can stay completely hidden until 2024, there's no telling what else is still sitting under the canopy, waiting for the next flight path to finally pass overhead.